we're here today with amazing illustrator, Owen Davey. He does everything the illustrator can do, from animations to writing books to editorial illustration, basically anything you can imagine. And he does it very well. I love the style of illustration Owen has. It's really warm, really, really nice. And yeah, I just can't wait to ask all the questions. I'll ask some questions first, but guys, this is a conversation between all of us. So if you have any questions to Owen, then just type them in a comment section below and we'll ask them live here. So welcome, Owen.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. Where are you? Are you in the forest?
No, I'm in my local park. I figured I didn't have to be at my desk, so I thought I might as well walk. Nice to be outside.
Nice. You live in Lancashire, is this correct?
No, I live in Leicester. So
Leicester. Leicestershire. Of course.
Yeah,
Leicester.
Leicestershire. Yeah, in Leicester at the moment.
Great.
Trying to move down south at the moment, but that's fine.
Interesting. So let's start from the beginning of your career. You studied illustration at university.
Yep.
First of all, how did you decide that illustration would be something you will do? Because I think it's such a bold move to make, especially when you're young and you're picking a career, because Illustrator is not an office job, a job with a salary. It is a very, very tricky industry. So deciding from a very early age that that's something you want to do, that's quite brave. So how did you know and how did you make this decision?
I mean, to be honest, it wasn't brave. It was just kind of just blindly enjoying doing illustration stuff and just thinking, well, I might as well do that, and then afterwards I'll worry about the job side of it. Because I've always wanted to draw for a living. That's just kind of what I love doing. And as soon as I found out what illustration was, I was like, okay, that's what I want to do.
Did you have a backup plan? Like most of the illustrators that I know studied graphic design is a kind of fallback career. If illustration doesn't work out, they can become graphic designers. And to be honest, some of them actually switched from illustration to graphic design. Was it the plan for you, or you always knew illustration was the only?
I mean, I studied hard and stuff, so if illustration failed, I had some good kind of what are they called, qualifications. So I haven't used them in so long, it's not relevant. But yeah, I had some good qualifications that I could do other things with, and you know, if I could make a living from illustration, I'd try and find another career. But I just kind of didn't worry about it to start with. I just started blindly doing it and hoping that people would want to pay me to do it, basically.
Well, that's a great plan. So what happened next? When you graduated from university, you had all this passion for illustration, you wanted to do it. How did you actually make it work? Because it's not easy at all.
No, I mean, well, it requires a lot of hard work, basically. So, but a bit of luck as well. Like about a week before I graduated, I actually got a paid job with The Guardian, which is a newspaper in the UK, for anyone who's not in the UK. Just a little editorial illustration, you know, 110 mil squared, for one column. But it was kind of my jumping block, and you know, a lot of clients in the UK have heard of the Guardian. A lot of people outside of the UK have heard of the Guardian. So it was kind of a useful little, you know, tick on the CV. So when I then,
do you remember how much you were paid for this very first job?
I don't like to disclose what people have paid me, but I'm more than happy. It was just over 100 quid. I'll say that.
Okay.
But I like to not say too much about how much clients pay, because it's not fair.
No worries.
But yeah.
But as a student, when you graduate and you kind of have to make decision, can I make a living out of this job? And then you get this Guardian gig and you get paid, and it's, well, for me, when I was starting as a designer, I remember the first design job I did, I was like, whoa, this is money. And I just did what I loved, so I can keep doing it. While with some other jobs, you work really hard and then you get paid peanuts, and then you get really disappointed in the profession. So was this first experience of being an illustrator positive for you?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I actually hated the illustration I did at the end. It was one of those weird things where, you know, when you put so much pressure onto something, you're like, oh, this is my first professional job. You know, I've got to make it as good as possible. And I spent ages coming up with a concept, and it was just a bit convoluted. It was okay. It was fine. You know, the client was happy. That's the main thing at the end of the day. And I've worked with the art director, 7 or 8 times since. So I obviously didn't disappoint. But it was,
How long was the project?
Well, it was just a quick editorial, so it was probably only about, I don't know, 3 or 4 day turnaround. But I got the phone call when I was just kind of chilling out at my girlfriend's house, and then immediately kind of rushed home and just spent the next 3-4 days solidly working on it. But I remember I sent through the final. I think it was at least a day early, but it might have been a couple of days early. Just which kind of sums up the way I've always kind of done my career. I try and do everything as early as possible, so that then I've got time to chill out afterwards, and it means that the art directors are kind of happy and they're chill as well.
You figured out the biggest freelancing trick is
exactly.
Be on time, meet the deadlines. People will love you for that.
Exactly, and they'll keep coming back because it means you're easy to work with. So,
yeah, absolutely. So what happens after that? You got this first job. Then after that, you got so many offers that you could pick. Was it still hard? Was it?
No. Got no offers after that. I then spent, to be honest, probably the next 4 or 5 years contacting art directors. Sorry, I'm just checking I'm not going to get run over as I walk around. Contacting art directors kind of, probably about 5 a day, just to, show them my work and say, would you be interested in getting me to do any work, commissioning me for anything? The vast majority have never contacted me and completely just disregarded
Where
the email.
Where did you get the emails of the art directors? Would you go to every website of a design studio? What was the strategy there?
It's a mixture of a few different things, to be honest. So I used to go to Borders when that still existed, and go and look at all the magazines and look at the art directors for all of those magazines. I also used to look online as well, and I contacted big companies kind of through like AOI used to do this list of art directors. I don't know if they still do, but you pay. I can't even remember how much you pay, but you pay a bit and you get a list of all these art directors and you can contact them and stuff as well. So I did all of that, and I'd usually just send a quick email just saying, this is what I do. If you're interested in working with me, great. Here's my details. And that's kind of it. And then,
do you remember how many emails approximately? Was it like hundreds that you've sent to get one response?
Oh, I've sent thousands and thousands of emails. Yeah. I spent the first few years of my life as an illustrator, just contacting people and kind of just sending stuff into the ether and hearing nothing back. But I also at the same time, so I wanted to be really proactive to start with and just make sure I was contacting people, because I just assumed no one knew I existed, which is 100% true. So I just wanted to kind of make people aware, so that even if they didn't like my work at that point, they might see something and maybe check back in a year's time and see how it was going. But so I also I contacted some agents as well. So I went to London and did a visit and met about 5 or 6 agents.
And did you pick one? Do you work with an agent now?
I did pick one. Yeah, I've got an agent. I've had an agent since I began, who are called Folio Art, and they're awesome and they're great. But I know a lot of agents aren't great and they take advantage of illustrators and stuff. But Folio are not one of those.
So for those who don't have an agent and those who are illustrators listening and watching us, can you explain how does it work with an agent? Do you have to always, if you have someone emailing you directly, do you still have to go through your agent? How does the relationship work? How often does the agent give you work? So what's the relationship like?
Well, it depends on agent to agent. I personally feel like a good agent will be willing to make deals based on your requirements, and if your cousin is coming to you and saying, can you illustrate this thing, and then your agent's taking a percentage without doing any negotiating or any work in it, it seems like a very unfair deal to me. So I think that's poor form. But the vast majority of stuff, when you don't know where work's coming from, someone may contact you and say, oh, I've seen your website or whatever, but you don't know if your agent's contacted them a couple of years ago about your work. So the vast majority of the work goes through my agents, and they take a cut of the money I earn. So it's in their interest to get as good a price as possible. And they have my back, and they make sure that the project runs smoothly, and they make sure that their clients don't take the piss or do things they shouldn't be doing in terms of usage and all that kind of stuff. So
And do they
yeah, it's
act
great.
like a project manager as well, or they purely a salesperson who gets you the job and then it's up to you how to deal with the actual job?
No, yeah, no, they act more as a sort of sales manager, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
because usually there's a project manager within the
Mm-hmm.
project, or I'll manage it or whatever. You know, they're there for the business side of it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they sort out the money, they sort out the contracts, they sort out
Mm-hmm.
usage rights, all that stuff, all the boring stuff that I don't want to do.
Okay. Yeah,
They sort
makes sense.
out, and then they get paid for it, which is great. So I do the fun stuff, and everyone wins.
Yeah,
So
brilliant. And then, so you met agents, you contacted art directors. I assume it was very hard, kind of year, 2 years of your life trying to figure out how to be successful in this industry. So where was the point, like this make or break it point, where you found this perfect job or client when you knew, okay, I made it. I can be successful illustrating this industry.
well, I mean, it doesn't. It's not really a point. It's a gradual thing. So I've had a. This seems like a tangent, but it will make sense. So I had well, my partner had a kid about 11 months ago, and we've been raising this kid. And everyone talks about, you know, the moment they first say a
Yeah.
word, or the moment they, you know, reach up to you or whatever, is amazing. But the problem is, half the time you're not sure if they're doing it intentionally or if it's an accident, or you know, it's a very gradual thing. So there's no like definite point where they're sitting up for the first time on their own. It's you know, and that's kind of how I felt with illustration. It's like, it's not necessarily like there's a moment, oh, I'm an illustrator now. It's just kind of like, I don't know. It just seemed like I was more and more comfortable in the world of it, and I was getting more work. And I think probably after about 4 or 5 years, I stopped contacting art directors. I don't really do that anymore because I'm now in the lucky position where they come to me, which is amazing because it means I get more work coming in and I can say no to the stuff that doesn't inspire me or isn't well paid enough or whatever. But yeah, so it's been a gradual progression. But
Okay, what was
yeah.
okay? If you can't remember the best like moments of your illustration career, what was the very lowest point when you thought, oh, was there a point when you thought, oh, maybe I picked the wrong job? It's not for me.
No, to be honest. I'd like to. I suppose I'd like to say yes, and I push through it. But no, I've kind of been quite single-minded with it. I'm quite a single-minded individual, and it was kind of I just wanted to do this, so I just put all my efforts into it. And I, you know, to start off with, it was kind of, I suppose it was the lowest, but also it was the funnest because I was learning about the industry, and it was a huge learning curve going into the industry. And I was working at. My mum let me go back and live with her after uni, and I worked in her back room and had to listen to her TV on in the background whilst I was trying to illustrate. And it was, you know, it was a kind of fairly crappy existence, but I was doing the thing I loved and not getting paid that much for it, but enough to be able to afford to go out and have drinks with mates or whatever. And yeah, it was fine. Sorry, did that answer the question? I feel like I've gone on a tangent there.
Oh no, that does make sense. I mean, I suppose you have to kind of live through this first couple of 4 years of your career when it's not very, I don't know, that
Glamorous?
easy. Yeah, and then
Easy,
and
yeah.
then it gets better. And in terms of finding your style, because you have very distinct style, you're recognized for your style, and I love it. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
So how did you find it? Was it during your university years, you experimented with lots of different things and you found it? What was the process, and when did you know, okay, this is what I will stick to for the rest of my career?
So I personally, I don't actually feel like I'm there, but so whenever anyone asks me about style, it's the number one question that students ask about. And I'm a firm believer of kind of style being like an ingrained thing within people. You know, I always use this example. If you put, you know, 100 illustrators in a room and ask them to draw the same pair, they will, every single one of them will look different. Even if it's just subtle differences or subtle variations, just the way that you see the world is kind of the ingrained style. The difference, the thing that you need to kind of work out is the way you like working and the way you kind of bring out that style or highlight elements of the way you see the world. So that's the thing I've been playing with. But then if you look back at the work I was doing, you know, 9-10 years ago, whenever it was I graduated, and the work I've done now, they're very, very different. It's very much sort of an evolution. And I'm still trying to play with the style that I've used the word style, with the sort of process that I use. And kind of trying to streamline it, and sometimes I add more texture, sometimes I add more line. I kind of, I play around with it all the time, and I kind of hope I always do that, because that's where the excitement comes from for me. I'm exploring the kind of visual language that I have. So
it makes sense. I think in one of the interviews you mentioned that some of your friends, relatives, they say something and they say, "Oh, was it you who illustrated that? Because it really looks like your style." And you look at it and it doesn't look anything like your style.
No.
So my question is, how do you feel like you're different from people who are, let's say, in a similar area of styles? And second, does it bother you? Do you try to be different from other illustrators? And what's that thing that you're trying to be different by?
I mean, to be honest, I just try and do my own thing. I try not to worry too much about, I'm obviously inspired by other people around me and other illustration stuff that's around me, and, all those kind of amazing illustrators that have kind of existed in the past before me. And I absorb all this stuff, and it will regurgitate in whatever form it regurgitates, and produce whatever I'm producing. There's that phrase about no art is ever unique or whatever. And I mean, people have been doing art for so long that I'm never going to be able to do something completely brand new. It's just my own combination of everything I love. And so I don't worry too much if there's, some similarities to other people's work, because it's never going to be completely unique. And I don't think I'm going to reinvent the wheel. So I'm quite happy with that. That's fine. I just create stuff that I like the look of, and
I think that's a great answer.
In a month's time I might not like it, but it's fine.
It's all about personal happiness. We have a question from the audience. Do you tend to like other illustrations that in the same geometrical style that you do, or do you prefer stuff that is way different from your own style?
Mix of both. I love illustration in kind of all its forms, and I'm not saying I love every kind of sort of approach that different people use and stuff, but I wouldn't ever say, I don't like traditional media stuff, because there's loads of stuff that I love that's traditional media, and then I love some kind of proper geometric vector stuff that's it's visual language is a fascinating thing, and so I wouldn't ever want to restrict the stuff that inspires me, the stuff that I look at. So I love it all equally, and all of it inspires me as well. Even sort of weird stuff might inspire me that you wouldn't think. So like Cézanne's work inspired me, several years ago.
Oh, wow.
Where, because it's weird, I used to look at his stuff and think, well, that bowl is wonky, why the hell would he do that? Or he's drawn it from a couple of different angles, why would he do that? It doesn't look real. And then half a decade ago I looked at it and thought, actually I kind of want to try that myself and do a couple of perspectives at the same time. And actually I do it a lot now, and sometimes what they call art directors ask me to not do it anymore because it's slightly weird, but I like it. It's fun.
I know what you mean. Actually, I have this theory about like your creative journey. So you know how in different stages in your life you kind of come to certain solutions or certain ideas. They're not like better than previous, but it just takes you sometimes to get to this drawing a ball from different angles or whatever that is.
Exactly.
And you kind of go through these stages, and then you look at another artist that lived like 100 years before you, and you can see that person going through exactly the same stage, and you're like, oh, it took me like 50 years to get to that. Well, I could have like looked at his work and get to this stage like much earlier. So I have this theory that if you have like a person, an artist whose work you really admire, and you feel like it was like kind of similar type of character to yourself, if you like really immerse yourself into his or her biography and work and kind of go through this 50, 60-year creative process faster, then you will be able to continue the kind of the style, the thinking, and be like a 100-year-old Cézanne or whatever it is, because if he lived now, that's what he would be doing. Do you feel like that you could be that person?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing because it happens in science a lot. In the phrase of standing on the shoulders of giants. People have done all this work before you, and you kind of piggyback on it and try and reach a little bit further. But then sometimes it's useful to go back to the basics of it as well, and the foundations, and actually question them sometimes as well. So yes and no. Sorry, that's a rubbish answer, isn't it?
No, I just wanted your thoughts on that. I don't think there is right answer in creativity at all.
Yeah, exactly.
And now the last question on the style, and we'll move to another topic. It's from the audience as well. How many years did it take you to figure out this particular way of working or style, whatever you prefer?
Well, I'm still working it out. I'm still playing with it. I mean, so I learn new techniques a lot of the time, and it's only a few years ago that a friend of mine pointed out that you could create kind of vector stuff in Photoshop, and I was like, okay, that's amazing. I'll use that. And I used the shape tool and the pen tool, and actually started creating stuff with vector, which actually then influenced my work, and my stuff has become a little bit more, I suppose, refined or slick, which may not be to everyone's taste, but that's kind of that's the direction it's gone. And then recently I've started integrating Illustrator into my work, which is helping with certain kind of shapes and stuff as well. And I'm starting to play around with using an iPad Pro for adding a bit of texture. Still not as much as I should. I know I should probably use a Wacom tablet. I still use a mouse or a trackpad, which is so old school, but it's fine. It's good. It works for me. So
it works, whatever works. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about the content of what you're actually creating, not just the style. So I noticed, first of all, you love drawing animals, but also you have quite interesting influences of other cultures, and especially Russian culture, which was quite fascinating because I was born in Russia, so therefore I want to know, where does it come from? You explore the life of Laika. To be honest, that's the story that, I don't know, most of the kids at Soviet Union absolutely loved. Though we were lied what happened to poor Laika at the end. We were told she lived happily ever after on Mars, which obviously wasn't the case. So you also illustrated some Rasputin stories. So where does it come from?
I mean, to be honest, a lot of the stuff comes from so it's to do with the research. So the Leica story, it was just that the story itself kind of hit a chord with me. I was kind of exploring the concept of death a bit at the time. I'd lost some people I loved and things like that, and I was struggling with the idea of the fact that when you imagine them, you can still imagine their reactions to things, or you can imagine, adventures they might go on, or things they might have done with their day. And also at the same time, I happened to come across this story of Laika, and I was like, oh, well, wouldn't it be lovely if we could give her a happy ending, if we could come up with, imagine an ending for her that would kind of befit the terrible life that she'd had, so a nice kind of ending for her. By
the way, for guys who don't know that, because I don't know if everyone is aware of the story of Laika, do you want to tell what happened?
Essentially, within the space race, that everyone was just determined to get humans up there as quickly as possible, and in the process of that, it made kind of perfect sense to the scientists at the time to use animals as test subjects. And Laika was a dog that was found on the streets of Moscow that was then kind of trained up and then sent off out into orbit. But they never planned on bringing her back, and she died out in orbit, which is just horrible. And actually, they're not sure if she died from heat or if it was from the stress, because it started to get quite warm on the re-entry and things like that. But not pleasant, a really unpleasant way for a dog to die. And presumably most dogs just want a family to love them, and so I thought I'd give her a family to love her, basically, which is just super sad. But that's the story of Laika, and that's where I was. That's what kind of sparked the thing. But then whenever I come up with an idea or if there's some kind of commission that involves a culture or involves some kind of aesthetics, I'll try and kind of delve into that and not reap it or anything like that and use it for my own gains, but just kind of touch on those things and try and get inspired by it, so that it has a sense of authenticity, or so that it just kind of has a sense of place as well. So I felt you couldn't do a story about Laika without showing some of the amazing kind of propaganda kind of vibes and posters and stuff that were about at the time, and to try and kind of promote, I felt like I had to kind of dip into that and use that within my artwork. So
I loved it, because again, I think being born in Soviet Union, there are so many illustrators and artists who kind of try to use the style and try to kind of create some sort of or mimic that certain era, and it kind of looks a bit tacky, and I always hate those imitations that have no authenticity, while yours was kind of your own spin on that, so it didn't it didn't feel unauthentic, and it had the references from that time, but at the same time it was your illustration, your story. Absolutely, I had it actually printed out. I remember I forgot, I was doing research for some project, and I remember I found the illustration. I was like, this is amazing. The cover. Actually, I think I pitched your work to so many clients to use you as an illustrator when I worked in an agency. So yeah. We didn't win, but
yeah. Well, no, thank you for trying. Anyway, that's all good. No, I did the whole thing of I like to kind of think of when I'm kind of exploring something visual, I'll try and approach it like a good cover song is done. So rather than just make it a terrible karaoke song where you're trying to repeat it but not as well, you have to know your own strengths with something, and you have to push that side of it and have your own unique take on something, but then just get some of the essences of it. So, some of the best cover songs are ones where they've just kind of completely reinvented it, but the seed of the beginning song is still there. And that's what I try and do when I, delve into things like that.
Another project that was very interesting, and you write a lot of children's books, like I suppose was one of them, though I loved it as a grown-up. So Night is another one, and actually, have you ever seen a review of this book by a 9-year-old YouTuber?
No, I don't think I have. No. But please send me a link.
I will send you the link.
Is it a bad review or a good review?
Of course, it's a good review, but it's.
I've had some bad reviews. But
she's an absolutely brilliant 9-year-old who very cutely talks about your book and illustration. She says this guy's a really good illustrator, and his illustrations are really good. And the story is very interesting. You can clearly see that this person is creative. So in case you ever doubted your identity, that you were reviewed by a 9-year-old as a creative and very good illustrator.
That's good. I love that.
What is your personally favorite book? And also, how do you even come up with these ideas for the book? What will be the next one? Will it be a serious one or semi-serious like Leica? Or will it be more like imaginary one about dreams and nights?
I mean, to be honest, I think most of the best ideas I come up with, I've no idea where they've come from. It will be that I'm lying down trying to sleep, and for some reason my brain won't shut up, and so I'll have to write a little note on my phone, and then a couple of months later I'll look at it again and think, actually that's quite cool. There's something in that. I'll kind of play with that, and I think that's where all of those ideas have come from. To be honest, they're just little moments of kind of inspiration. I don't really know where they've come from, but I've then tried to follow and get the best out of. I mean,
you never have like 10 ideas at the same time, so you have to pick one.
I've got loads.
So how do you then pick the one that deserves to become a book?
To be honest, it's just whatever one's flowing the best at the time. So, I mean, there's a bunch of ideas that I really think have got something in them, but I just haven't managed to get round to doing, or I've hit some kind of stumbling block, and I think maybe if I come back to it in half a year or a year, I'll be able to step over it. But at the moment, it's just a brick wall, and why bother? So, just kind of whatever's easiest at the time, I suppose.
So talking about books and all the other work that you're doing, because on your website you also sell prints, you sell postcards, lots of different things. So you're more than just an illustrator. You're essentially a business owner that does lots of different things. When did this transition happen? When did you realize, okay, it's not enough just doing different jobs for agencies, I need to do something on my own, sell my own stuff? And also, how successful is this? Would you recommend illustrators to start their own stores and start selling things, or is it like too much hassle and not much profit?
No, well, to be honest, I've always been. Most of my decisions are not based on business. They're based on. I'm very business minded. I'm very good at kind of getting clients to pay what they should pay and all that kind of stuff. But the reason I do stuff is because I get inspired by it. And I've always bought prints from illustrators and artists that I like, and it's just always something I've done, and my house is too full of prints, and there's not enough room for all of it, and the frames have cost me a fortune, all that kind of stuff. And because I've always appreciated that stuff, and because I've always been inspired by it, I just wanted to do it myself. And so, you know, hopefully in the future I can do things like mugs and T-shirts and all that kind of stuff as well. But I just haven't found the time to do it yet. And prints are sort of an easier sort of start-off point, and it's something that's affordable for me to buy in and affordable for other people to buy. And that's one of the things that illustration is also awesome for. It's not elitist in any way. It's for everyone. Everyone can afford it.
And are there many people who buy it, or how successful is this whole store?
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice, I mean, I wouldn't be able to make a living off it, but it's a nice kind of added bonus. And it's really lovely that, you know, people like my work enough to then want to frame them and put it up on the wall, or to give
and
it
is it just UK, or does it travel?
No, it's all over the world.
Where was the furthest your piece of design travel?
All over the place, to be honest. South Korea, Australia, Canada, like Africa, loads of, like, I've just named an entire continent. South Africa, sorry. Someone, there's in fact, there's some illustrators there that regularly seem to buy stuff from me, which are really lovely. So, it's wicked. It's really nice that my kind of illustrations are around the world. And I just love the idea of hopefully someone at some point will see my illustration somewhere and be like, oh, you did that. And someone will tell me
Have you ever seen your own illustration? Like you went to someone's studio and it's like, oh, this is mine?
Only at friends' houses, but that doesn't really count. No, I've seen my books in stores though. That's quite fun. And my family members often send me photos where they're in a Waterstone somewhere or something, and they're stood next to my book and send me a photo, which is lovely. So
that's really nice.
It's cool seeing your work in the wild. You know, just seeing it out there.
Oh, brilliant. We have some more questions from the audience. I think there is one. What was your first job? I assume that was the Guardian job that you
Yes,
talked
that was
about.
the Guardian one.
Okay. Are there any graphic designers or illustrators working now that you are really intrigued by?
Yeah, pretty much all of them, to be honest.
Any particular ones that you follow?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't follow that many people on my Instagram. I tend to only follow the people's work who I love. So to be honest, the best option is to just go through the people I follow on Instagram and just be like, oh, what's their work like? You know, there's a few kind of photographers or some sort of random ones in there, but the vast majority of it is illustrators and graphic designers whose work I love. And there's quite a variety of sort of styles and things in there. And I love looking through my Instagram feed. It's kind of the one social media thing that I'm not kind of jaded by and actually really enjoy looking through still. So, yeah.
And do you, right now, when you already have, you said, clients coming to you, do you still work on your own? Have you ever thought of kind of building more of a studio? Do you have a community of other illustrators that you work with, or you like single person in your own house?
It's just a solo show at the moment, to be honest. My partner helps me out with sending out prints and things like that, and she'll give me her opinion on stuff and things like that, and I'll ask other illustrators for their opinions on work while I'm working on it and stuff. But yeah, I mean, with illustration, it's such a visual language rather than necessarily, like with a design studio, for example, you can have quite a lot of different styles and it all kind of works together, but my mind works in a certain way, and because it's not a collaboration, it's my mind put onto paper, and so adding other people in seems like it would be changing that somehow. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so I just kind of stick to me, keep it simple. You know, I could get someone else in to try sort of copy my work, but then it would seem like a disservice to them to get them to do what I'm doing. And you know, if they're good enough to copy what they could do their own thing and make a living off it themselves. And it just seems like I'm depriving the world of another illustrator. So yeah, it's not really something that appeals to me, I don't think.
Okay, no, it makes sense. I think it's so important for a creative person to find their own ways of working, whether it's on their own, whether it's part of the agency, whether it's living on an island, whether it's sitting at home or going to the office or coffee, like there are so many things that you need to figure out as a creative person, where you're most productive, where you're most creative, and what you're most happy with. So it's good to see someone who figured it out and knows how to do it. We have a last kind of 5-ish minutes of conversation. So guys, if you have any more questions, please put them now so we can answer them. There are a couple of compliments to your work. Obviously, everyone who joined, I'm sure they love your work, as do we, and as do I. So everyone is very grateful for you sharing the experience. Some people asking, where are you going?
Nowhere. I've literally walked around in the weirdest squiggle of a circle for the last kind of hour. Yeah, I just thought I might as well walk. You know, it's a sedentary job where you don't get any exercise, so any chance for exercise is a good idea.
Especially when it's good weather, I think it's good to use this opportunity. Some people asking if this video will be saved. It will be saved for 24 hours on our account, Future London Academy, and we will try to upload it somewhere else afterwards. So keep following us and we'll let you know where this video will pop up. People also asking, what inspires you?
The big one is usually nature, to be honest. The reason I end up drawing animals a lot is because they're just so cool, and I just like drawing them. They're endlessly fascinating and incredible, and you know, vastly important to the planet and everything. So yeah, often nature, but sometimes that includes kind of space, and sometimes it's just animals, sometimes it's like a leaf.
On that note, what is your favorite animal to draw?
Oh, I get asked this question a lot, and I just don't know. Mammals are quite hard, so probably not mammals. Fish, probably fish. They're really fun because they're weird looking anyway, and people don't know the anatomy of them quite so well as they do mammals, and so you can get away with changing stuff a lot more, and it's still looking all right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Wow, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
What is your favorite sketch app?
Oh crap! What do I use? I don't. No, wait, do I? I've been using Astropad. I'm so new to it. Honestly, I bought an iPad Pro like a couple of months ago, and I've used no, probably about 3 or 4 months ago now actually. But I've used a bit of the Astropad so that I can just use it on Photoshop. But I don't. Yeah. Other than that, I just draw with pencil and paper. So
nice. Nice.
Yeah.
More questions coming. How far are you taking your animal book series? How long does each book take you?
Well, I hope to just keep doing them. They're really fun because I love the research side of it as well. Like it's a mammoth task to actually do the research because I'm not a biologist, so it takes a lot of research. But yeah, I mean the research side takes a few months, I suppose. But it's not solid work. It's always kind of a background thing, and then the same for the illustrations. So it probably takes me half a year to do them, but you know, I'm not sat every day working on them. They're kind of a dip in and out, and some days there's like slogging away at it, other times I just do a little bit of research. So yeah.
Nice. Quack94 is asking, do you have any recommendations for people who want to share their work and attract clients?
Social media, I suppose.
Any particular one? Instagram, Twitter?
I think Instagram's a great one because it's so immediate. Like, you know, it's a visual app. That's the whole point of it. So, you know, sharing visual stuff on it makes perfect sense. Twitter, like I've used Twitter and I used to use it quite a lot more, but it's still kind of a mainly text-based medium, whereas Instagram, the visual is the most important thing, and then the text is there if you want to look at it. So I always find Instagram's just slightly better for that. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like keeping a good website, making sure that that's always up to date and as good as possible, and then literally just sharing it with people. You know, making sure you contact people that might be interested in it, or yeah, putting stuff up on Instagram a few times a week. I try and do it every day, but I've been failing miserably recently because I've been really busy. So yeah.
Understandable. Last couple of questions. What type of rubber do you use? Quite random.
I don't know. I think I'm using like one of those Stettler ones, you know, STAEDT.
Is it the white one?
Yeah, it's white with has like a they're sort of like rectangle ones. But I
Yeah.
used to use like a. To be honest, it's whatever one I've got. Yeah, I don't use like
No
I don't like
preference
putty rubbers. Putty rubbers are rubbish. I don't know why everyone likes them. But yeah, I mean, I just use an HB pencil, so any kind of standard rubber works well for me because I don't press very hard either. So.
Great. Favorite shark?
Favorite what? Sorry.
Shark.
Oh, shark. Oh, whale shark, because they're huge and beautiful and gentle giants, and I would love to see one in the wild.
I like how much you know about animals through your work. I think it's incredible.
I've always loved animals, so it's a great excuse.
Yeah, I would never be able to pick a favorite shark. There's too much. What is the secret to keep doing the work as an illustrator for upcoming decades?
Well, I mean, I've only done it for 1 decade, so I don't know. I mean, I may crash and burn and miserably fail in my career, but I think if you've got to create work that inspires you. So, I mean, I try to say no to work that comes in that isn't going to inspire me. Stuff that you know, maybe they're referencing some old work that I'm not that doesn't feel very relevant to me anymore, and so I will say no to those jobs, even if they're quite well paid, because then you end up getting stuck in a rut. So unless someone's interested in what I'm doing now, I'm not really interested in doing the job most of the time. So
that's a good advice.
That's kind of the approach.
Yeah. When did you start feeling confident in your specific style? But I would change the question from specific style to just being confident being an illustrator.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I suppose you have to just try not to worry about the negative things people say and try to just take on the positives. But then, I mean, if you master that, then you're some kind of Jedi. Yeah, but yeah, I think just creating something for yourself. I think that's the important thing. If you're too hung up on other people's perceptions of what you're doing, then you're going to fail, because you're going to be, you know, flip-flopping all over the place doing stuff to please other people. Whereas if you're doing something that pleases you, then, you know, you please yourself, done. That's fine, you know? That's my approach.
I think this is applicable to any job, whether you're running a business or being a designer. Just, make sure that you do it for yourself, you like what you do, and then you'll keep going. Okay, the last, last question. Sorry, there are too many questions to you.
That's fine. I'm easy. It's fine.
Do you recommend a Wacom tablet?
Wrong person to ask. I've used one like once, and I found it so alien that I just sort of threw it away in disgust. Gave it back to my friend who had lent it to me. I've no idea. It just feels weird in my hands. I've been using mouses and trackpads for like the last, I don't know, 18, 19 years of my life. And Wacom tablets just feel too alien in my hands that I can't get used to them.
It's quite interesting, because I'm not an illustrator, but I'm a designer, and I could never use a mouse. Like, mouse seems alien in my hand. I think like this kind of type of holding things doesn't, while the pen and a Wacom tablet I absolutely loved, and it just makes everything sit quicker. But I assume it's a personal preference. And with Illustrator, I think it's a lot about the texture and the kind of the feeling of drawing as well, not just the holding the pen feeling.
I think it's just that I'm used to using, like, because I've been working with Photoshop for so long, using these things, it's like second nature. So as soon as I get something else involved, it immediately draws me out of the process a bit more. So I could learn it, but I don't feel like I need to at the moment. So
great. Let's finish up with the last question, which I find very interesting. How do you free up your mind and not get overworked?
I do not know the answer to that. I have a tendency of taking too much on. Your advice. So, I take on too much. I try not to. I mean, having a kid helps you to reevaluate what's important in terms of, you know, whether you need to take on a job or not, because it means if I'm working, then I'm not hanging out with her. So that's quite a useful thing, but I wouldn't advise people just having a kid for that reason. It's hard because it's something that I love to do, and it's something that I, you know, it's my passion, my kind of hobby, and also my job and career and way of making money. So making sure I don't do it all the time is a very difficult thing to do. But other hobbies, I suppose, are useful to try.
I forgot to ask the best question. You play in a band.
I do. I do play the
I
badge.
think
Yeah.
it's so cool. And is it famous?
No. By no stretch of the imagination. No, it's basically we've all got our own careers and we're all in the creative industry, but we just love getting together and making music, and it's something creative, but there's nothing riding on it, which is amazing because it's just, it's creating for the sake of it. And if people like it, great. If not, it doesn't matter. We're doing something fun, and it's a
So I think
chance
this
to
is
hang
the
out with
answer,
mates as
actually,
well.
how to not get overworked. Do something else that is creative, that you
Yeah.
love doing, and you don't have, it's not your career. You're not planning to make anything out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You've answered it better than I did. I'm sure.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Owen. It was such a pleasure talking to you, and thank you
Oh,
guys
good chatting.
for all the questions. I enjoyed the answers as well as the questions. So thanks, everyone.